Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hidden growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your host. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brandon, and thanks for joining us for our latest episode.
Today we'll be speaking with Schermer Tamir, CEO and co-founder of Marketing by Emma, an agency focused on writing compelling copy for e-commerce and Amazon businesses to boost conversions and build real customer relationships. Emma digs deep on e-commerce copy and the lasting impact it can have on a business. Everything from lowering customer acquisition cost, keeping inventory returns low, and outplaying even the biggest competitors in your niche. We talk about what makes Amazon listing copy convert and where most online entrepreneurs go wrong with their copy. Emma brings nuanced copywriting strategy to light and ties it all together with a solid marketing framework. This is a great episode for those who want to reach the next level in their business through the power of writing.
That's right, Sarah, but we don't want to give away too much just yet, so let's dig into the interview and see what Emma has to share, and then at the end of the episode, we'll go over a common question that many online business owners face and what you can learn from them. So let's get started.
Welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast. We are really excited to have today's guest on, Schermer Tamir. So Emma, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sarah and Brandon. It is great to be here. I'm pumped, ready to talk about some e-commerce copywriting.
Yes. Well, we're definitely pumped to have you on to talk about that. I think that is a common question a lot of people face. And it's so good to have an expert in the room to finally address that. So to kick things off, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you get your entrepreneurial journey started and what's it look like today?
You'd think I'd be better at telling that story by now, given the amount of times I've needed to tell it. But I still feel like I'm much better with this on paper than I am audio-wise, so please bear with me as I probably stumble through things. So as you mentioned, my name's Schermer Tamir. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Marketing by Emma, and we help e-commerce businesses create conversion spiking copy for their Amazon listings, website, and any of those foundational texts that businesses need in order to be able to effectively communicate with their dream customers. And I kind of had somewhat of a winding start into the world of entrepreneurship. So I'm not one of those people that was, born and just knew right off the bat that business is what I need to be doing. I tried a lot of different things. I lived in a lot of different countries. And it was actually on my second date with my husband that he told me, I don't know whether we're going to continue seeing each other, but I can see how miserable you are at your job. I was doing marketing for a startup at the time. And I can see how miserable you are. I have a really wide network. I'd love to be able to connect you with some people. And I was pretty resistant to that. And, we're both stubborn people. And I think one of the few times that his stubbornness won out over me was in this case. So it took a while. It took a move to the US. And one day I came home from doing sales and marketing at a trade show for another company. And when I'd come home, he had a list of names of people that I needed to contact on Monday that were interested in working with us. So it really just started out small as a freelance business. But what's so cool about the e-commerce space is when you do good work, people want to tell others about it. And so before we really knew what was happening, suddenly we were getting approaches from people all over the world that had heard about what we were doing and wanted to work with us. And now 4.5 years or so later, and we're just continuing to grow and do our best to create the very best copy to help businesses on their journey.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I love that. I love it. Second date story. It's like, you know what? If this doesn't work out, I think that I see some opportunities for you. Let me help you out with that. And obviously, lo and behold, here you guys are still together later. That's so cool.
Still together in business together as well. He's actually my co-founder. Amazing. So yeah. We weathered that second date and a whole lot more.
Awesome. I love it. It kind of related to what you were saying. I was wondering, what led you specifically to e-commerce writing? And what kind of need did you see for this in the market that you're hoping to fill? Was it something like you guys were kind of looking out in the space and going, gosh, people really struggle with writing correctly for e-com, and man, everything that we're doing over here and these other industries would just, it would convert, it would work. I don't know. Is that kind of what you were seeing when you were getting started?
So I didn't see the vision at all, to be honest. I have to give full credit to Erez, my husband. And a lot of his friends were in the Amazon world at the time that he was starting to recognize this need. And they were in sort of all facets of it. So people were selling, people were service providers, having courses. And a common theme that kept coming up is the need for strong writing. At the time, writing an Amazon listing looked very different than what it looks like today. Unfortunately, some of those sort of trends have carried forward, like doing some very aggressive keyword stuffing, for example. But it really in its infancy when it comes to things like listing optimization. And so he saw this need for strong marketing writing and how that could have a really positive impact in helping set these businesses apart, even when they were using, whatever software tools to identify whatever product was trending. And so there were a bunch of other people selling the identical product from the identical supplier. And still we were able to help them be at the top of the pack. And so things just sort of grew from there.
Yeah, it's amazing that you had that experience prior to, starting this current project that you're working on. And it kind of leads me into my next question for you, Emma, as far as the biggest differences you've noticed between, let's say, marketing for those startups in the beginning days and compared to marketing for e-commerce brands. How would you say the marketing side for these two different types of business models differ between one another?
Sure. So the more traditional companies, so I've worked for everything from software companies to even fine dining. And one of the things maybe even the most important thing with that style of marketing is relationship development. So it's not a get in and get out, make the sale and you're done. It is really about cultivating something deeper. If you have a fine dining establishment, you want people to come back. You want them to tell their friends. You want them to be posting photos on Instagram and be, excited when you release a new menu or have a special event coming up. If it's software, then you need to keep people engaged and continuing to use it and maybe interested in some of the more advanced features that they would need to upgrade in order to be able to unlock. And so it's not about just getting people in the door, but making sure that they're staying and that they're continuing to come back and bringing people in with them. And I think that's something that e-commerce businesses recognize, but it's not all the way there, particularly when you're thinking about companies that are selling on Amazon exclusively or sort of newer Shopify businesses that are really just taking a very aggressive approach at just getting as much traffic as possible. They tend to have a sort of shorter game approach in mind.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I guess in that regard of, especially with Amazon FBA, so many people are just trying to get as much traffic to their listings as possible. And they're not taking that, as you had mentioned, that personal approach to building that relationship with them. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that. What would you say is your personal approach for writing for e-commerce brands? And how would that differ between some of those other examples that you had just mentioned?
Sure. So I really try to bring in exactly what I was speaking about that these other non-e-commerce types of businesses do, which is a strong sense of brand identity combined with a clear idea of who your customers are so that you're really able to not just get people excited for that initial sale, but become something beyond just that product that somebody found on Amazon. Because you might be spending a lot of money for customer acquisition. And so if you're spending that much, then it is incredibly valuable and worthwhile to think about how you can generate repeat business, increase the value of the cart, or, even turn your customers into fans that are going to want to tell other people about the product that you're selling. And the copy is one piece of that, but it is a very important piece because your listing or your product page on Shopify or whatever it might be is really your only opportunity as a business to be able to speak directly to your customer. So they're not getting on the phone and having a conversation with you. They're not walking into the store and you're able to show them a bunch of different things and get a read on them and then tailor your pitch to them. You have to have all of that figured out so that by the time they click onto your page, you're able to have a really meaningful pitch that's not just sale, but is going to connect with the emotional drivers behind why someone would even want your product in the first place.
Yeah, that's an excellent approach. When you're talking about building a relationship and being able to make that pitch and go beyond what a brand maybe in its early days are doing, which is just like try to make the sale, try to get the numbers, etc. We're looking down this path of making it more long-term. This is something on my mind because it's probably something we'll dig into here in this interview is like somewhere like Amazon, at least as an outsider's perspective, seems a little bit harder to build a relationship, mainly because, you have less customer data, sometimes access to those customers versus like another ecom platform where you might have a little bit of more control over your brand and having access to your customers. I guess in that sense, I was wondering, is there a difference between writing copy for Amazon and other ecom platforms, let's say Shopify, for example? And if so, what would those differences look like?
I would say one of the main differences is you have to have an even stronger awareness of who your competitors are and how you fit into that landscape when it comes to Amazon. Because if you're a Shopify store, it's possible that people are still going to be going to Google and searching for your competitors in order to be able to assess sort of what's the best fit for them. But on Amazon, they don't even have to make any extra effort to do that. You can search any phrase in Amazon and you will be confronted with pages upon pages of products that search query. And so it's essential to understand how you fit into that ecosystem. And then just as important, what makes you different and what makes you special so that you give people something to grab onto. Because I think one of the things that Amazon still hasn't really figured out that well is helping customers compare products between each other. And so it can be kind of frustrating and even overwhelming and stressful to a customer when they are confronted with so many choices. And then on top of that, I think sort of the safe zone to play in is to copy what the top person or people in a space are doing. And so you get all of these product pages that look identical to each other. Then what kind of does that do to the customer? You're really forced to choose based on the amount of reviews or what's the cheapest. Or let's not forget that customers don't even have to make their purchase on Amazon. Maybe they'll be overwhelmed by it all and they say, you know what, I need to go to Target anyway. I'm just going to go see the options on the shelf, be able to look at them, feel them, and make a choice that way. So it's not just about making sure that people choose you. It's making sure that people are confident in wanting to get this product where they're buying it, which if we're talking about Amazon, then obviously it's there.
Just made so many good points there. One, I thought that was such an interesting take of, if they're shopping somewhere like Shopify, they're going to Google and then they're kind of directed to your site and they have to, maybe hop in and out to go find their product and look for it. But obviously in Amazon, that's a totally different kind of marketplace where everybody's crowded in the same room at once. They can see all the products and they can see all the listings. And then, the kind of second layer to that you're talking about is like, everyone's trying to emulate whoever it is at the top. Maybe you see this from time to time. That doesn't mean that the listing that is at the top necessarily has the best listing, the best writing, the best description of the product. So then you kind of got everybody emulating that whoever was leading the pack. And that probably doesn't necessarily put sellers in the best place if they're like, well, I'm a little bit afraid to branch out here because this person at the top wrote this way. If I strike out and do something different, does that mean I'm not going to show up? I don't know. Is that something you see very often where if, everybody's emulating one person, but one person kind of set the wrong tone or isn't
all
quite
the
what
time.
It could be? Okay. You're like, the reason why I exist is this.
No, definitely. All the time. I think that's for a few reasons. One is, if you have the first mover's advantage, if you got onto Amazon 5 or 6 years ago, you're going to have a certain level of momentum. You're going to have been able to garner a huge amount of reviews. And so you may be the category leader purely just because you were there first. But even then, it doesn't mean that that position is safe. And on the other hand, you may have people that are at the top of the search results, but it's because they are investing heavily in advertising and marketing. And so maybe they're at the top, but maybe they're not even breaking even. Maybe they're spending really aggressively to try to drive out the rest of the competition so that they can then jack their prices back up or whatnot. So if you're kind of playing that approach, then it's very risky because once you get to the top, you're going to have to be really aggressive in defending your territory. And at the same time, if you're working your way towards the top, then you're going to have to be really scrappy in order to get the best opportunity at ranking where you want to rank. Whereas if you take a little bit more of the long-term approach, then it's carving out a unique niche. It's not going as directly head-to-head. But then when you get to that head-to-head position, you're able to do that from a much stronger place because you're not saying, we're the same thing. That one has more reviews, but look, we're $3 cheaper. Instead, you're saying, hey, I know that you really care about this. We really care about this too. And that's why we've done X, Y, and Z. And it might not even have anything to do with the product design itself. So that's to me one of the other really exciting things about copy and branding is that it's a fantastic tool when you may not be incredibly differentiated product design wise. It can still be something that you can use to set your business apart and to give customers something to grab onto that has deeper substance than something more arbitrary like your price.
That is such great advice. I think not to sort of like hit you over the head or make you repeat too much, but I do have kind of like $1 million question here for you. So what is good Amazon copywriting?
Great question. So good Amazon copywriting is precise, it's impactful, it balances strong knowledge of SEO without making it look obvious that you're just trying to pack in a bunch of keywords. It also has a really clear sense of the customer and addresses what the customer needs to know. Some of those need to know points may be rather straightforward. Like let's say you're buying a mug. I'm looking at my travel Yeti that's sitting next to me, and you drive a car that has really like precise sized cup holders. And so this is something that you're going to be taking in your car every day. You want to make sure that if it's too wide or too narrow, you don't want it tipping over and ruining your beautiful new car. So that might sound so silly, but if you have a car with really strangely shaped cup holders, and I've been in cars that have that, then that's a very big point of interest for you. And so if you can recognize that, you may actually be able to carve out a whole niche of, instead of just trying to compete on insulated tumblers, you're able to compete on insulated tumblers for this particular make of car that thousands and thousands of people are having the same pain point with. And, another example could be, let's say you're shopping for a microphone to be able to record podcasts even when you're traveling the world. So probably two of the biggest points that you need to know about that microphone are, one, what kind of device is it compatible with? Will it work with the computer that you're going to be using it? Or maybe you even want to use it with your phone. And two, since you're going to be traveling the world, you need to make sure that it's hardy and that it's made for travel, maybe that it's lightweight as well. And so those are those types of details that if you can't find them easily, then you're not necessarily going to invest more time in looking deeper and reading the reviews and in really considering this as an option. And so making sure that you're really precise with the words that you're using, that you're not saying more than what you need to, and that you're making it very skimmable for customers to be able to, at the first tier, match this product to their needs. And then from there, kind of invest a little bit more in that emotional connection and getting excited about this product because they know that it is going to be what they need it to be.
Yeah, I connected so well when you mentioned the podcast microphone. As a minimalist backpack traveler myself, it's something that Sarah and I, I'm sure we've both kind of researched and looked for the best, microphone to do these podcasts as well. And it kind of touched base, I guess, on the fact that, you're getting more granular in the specific product that you're looking for. And I guess when it comes to creating your listing pages as well, you're trying to be as granular as possible, but also still tell a story and tell your brand story, I guess, in that sense. And you had mentioned earlier in the call as well how maybe listing copy has changed over the years, back in the past. And I'm sure this goes as well for content sites where everyone was just keyword stuffing, every little thing they could, in the best microphone category. And, that's the old way of doing things. But I'm curious now with today and your years of experience with helping sellers with their copy, where do you think that most of these sellers go wrong when it comes to creating their copy? Are you still seeing a lot of this keyword stuffing or maybe just not telling a story? Yeah, what is your take on that?
Definitely still seeing a lot of keyword stuffing. I think that, not to generalize, but a lot of people in the e-commerce space, I think they're more comfortable with the analytics and the numbers side of things. And the creative space feels a little bit more uncertain, probably because there's not necessarily one right answer. So there are many different ways that you could take things. And because of that, I think that it can be intimidating. But keyword stuffing is one of the biggest mistakes, without a doubt. I would also say, kind of going in tandem with that, wanting to overwrite things. And even when you're thinking about the bullets on a listing, for example. So what is the purpose of a bullet just outside of Amazon? If you're seeing a bulleted list, it's meant to simplify things. It's meant to provide information in a very easily graspable way so that you can get a quick assessment of whatever it is. So, the highlights of a blog post or the main details of a product or whatever it is. And so you see on Amazon, that concept kind of has gone out the window oftentimes. And so you'll have these really wieldy hunks of text that are, 300 characters, 400 characters. They're these massive paragraphs, and all they're doing is overwhelming the customer and making them have to work to find the information that they need. So I would say that concise language is also so important. And then really having a clear perspective and embracing the idea of differentiation and being unafraid to maybe even narrow down who you're selling to. So I think that can be a really scary thing for businesses to consider, like, who aren't my customers? But when you do that, you're able to have a much more compelling argument and a stronger opportunity to win over your core customer base. So, if we're talking about a minimalist, lightweight, but still professional quality microphone for people that are traveling, it's true that somebody that's creating a really state-of-the-art recording studio may be turned off by that. However, are they really going to be your best customer anyway? Would they be people that would be happy with this lighter weight, portable microphone? Or for them, do they really need and want to invest in something that is at a professional recording level where all of the sound. I'm clearly showing my lack of knowledge when it comes to audio recording to be able to get into the specifics of what a professional would consider. I hope that at least the point is sort of there. So it's not just about making sure that you're getting the right kinds of customers, but it's actually also making sure that you're not making the wrong sales. And something that I think people don't consider enough, that because it's so easy to return something if you're a Prime customer, I don't believe that the sale is fully made until the customer actually gets the product home, opens it up, and commits to keeping it. Meaning that it's not just about getting that person to add to cart and buy. It's about making sure that you're communicating about your product clearly, connecting with the right kind of customers, and then fulfilling on what you've promised so that person has a positive experience and wants to commit to keeping it.
Yeah, very solid advice. Through your experience with your customers, they come to you, they're wanting you to update their listing pages or their listing content or their copy, and you're going through, you're doing your auditing checks for these listings. Would you say that a majority of the Amazon listing landscape is well written, or do you see just standout points that are just completely wrong on a lot of listings as you're going through and you're auditing your customers' listing pages?
Things have gotten better, but I would say by and large, most listings still have a lot of room for improvement, which I take as something really exciting, because that means that if you invest the time in really trying to figure these things out, then you have a really strong opportunity to be able to substantially increase the performance of your business. I can go on Amazon. By the way, it's not just the small people that are doing this wrong. In fact, I would argue that a lot of the smaller businesses that are maybe even native to Amazon, they understand the game a bit better and may see the importance of this. But businesses of all sizes are really doing a terrible job. So whenever I'm preparing a presentation, I'll just go to some of the big names that jump out at the top of my mind. And more often than not, those big names, I'm talking about brands that all of us would recognize that you could find in Walmart or Target or any retail store, are doing a terrible job of this. And so what that means is that there's great opportunity, even if you feel completely intimidated in going up against these very recognized names, if you can figure out how to do this piece right. Because yes, of course, there will be people that purchase because they have brand loyalty and it's something that they're familiar with. But there are also lots of people that could be open to changing their buying behavior if they find a business that better meets their needs or better aligns with their values or gets them excited in a way that their old standby can't or doesn't do.
Okay. And when it comes to competing with these bigger brands or going up against some of the more well-known names, what would you say, like, where would the opportunity lie or exist for sellers who are wanting to update their listings? Would you say you have like a checklist or maybe a few major key updates that most people need to start with? Or what would you say is your strategy when it comes to that opportunity?
So one of the main things that I would do is search whatever search term you want people to be using to find your product. Search it in Amazon and look at the results that come up and really put yourself into the position of being a customer looking for a product to meet their needs. And consider, what does the customer want to know? What are their main concerns? What are their stresses? And then what is their experience like in trying to fulfill this need? How might they get frustrated? Where might they be confused? How can you fit into this in a way that you're not just addressing all of those concerns, but also standing apart? And it seems maybe a little bit crazy to think, okay, just by being different, you might be able to be more successful. But there really is truth to that, because if you look at search results pages, everything looks the same. The main image looks the same. The title looks the same. The prices are nearly identical. And so if you can just actually figure out how to catch eyeballs, how to be different, then you've already made huge strides to perhaps shifting the attention your way. And so then your job from that point is being able to make sure that you are clearly and effectively connecting with your customers around those need to know details in order to make them feel confident that your product is a good fit. So looking at that search result page is hugely important. I would also encourage people selling on Amazon to not just keep their research in Amazon. A lot of the most exciting things that are happening and the really cool cutting edge marketing techniques out there are not happening on Amazon. They're happening with, awesome D2C brands selling on Shopify and all sorts of different places. And so take the time to look at the movers and shakers in your space and see how you might be able to gain some inspiration from them that you can then bring to Amazon that does tend to be a little bit slower to adopt some of those types of, I wouldn't just say practices, but even kind of just where marketing is right now. Like I'm thinking about, for example, a lot of the top fashion brands on selling on their own independent sites are really making a strong push for diversity in skin color, in body shape, in gender, and people are responding really positively to that. But if you look at Amazon shopping for almost any product, you're going to see images that reflect where marketing was 5 years ago. And so if you see that people are responding positively to that these brands are able to be massively successful by being more inclusive, then what would happen if you become one of the first brands to do that on Amazon? Again, just as an example there.
That's an amazing point. And again, this is sort of being like an outsider. Like, I guess I hadn't really thought about that. Also, a lot of the countries I live in, I don't get to enjoy Amazon. So I feel like very, very outside Amazon at this point. I think you make a really great point. Like, I know myself as a consumer, when I see inclusivity in how a brand is marketed, I get loads of that, say on Instagram ads and stuff. And I'll look at, what they're offering and they're on board with it. I'm like, cool, we're on the same page. You get me. You're more likely to get my business. And I noticed like one or two businesses maybe that I saw ads for recently that weren't doing that. And I remember being struck by that, like, oh, that you actually stand out as the business who's not really caught on and realize like that's the direction we need to be moving into. And now in a way you've lost my business because you're not keeping up. So that is super powerful advice to say, look beyond Amazon. Even though we think Amazon's like the pinnacle of e-commerce, it's not. Look at some faster brands that are a bit more nimble and operating outside the sphere. Try to emulate them, see where you can capture some of the customer base and potentially bring them onto Amazon and see what you can do there. I just think that's amazing insight and really, really great advice. Probably something that not a lot of people are thinking about as an Amazon seller.
Yeah. And I think that, what you mentioned of sort of this awareness that you had just as a customer, the more that you can bring that curiosity, even just to your own behaviors, we're all constantly engaging with businesses all day, every day. If you can take some time to sort of step back and say, why do I like this? What about this ad made me want to click it? This person that sent me a cold email, I hate cold emails, but something about the way they wrote this email made me want to follow up and respond, or maybe just made me want to keep it in my inbox to consider responding instead of just deleting it. And so we're all having many opportunities every single day to gain more insights about ourselves, which we can then apply to the decisions that we make as a business. So last night, my husband and I were eating dinner together and I bought this new hot sauce from Trader Joe's. And it's this South African hot sauce that's made with fermented chilies. And it has a really unique flavor that's pretty different from any other hot sauce that I've tried before. And then we just had this whole conversation about how brilliant Trader Joe's is as a business and how clued in they are to their customers. And so how that sort of translates through all of the decisions that they've made as a business, because you can go to any Trader Joe's location and you will find the exact same products as any other, which is different from any other grocery store. Most grocery stores, each location has their own buyers that are making those choices. And instead, what I would imagine, and I'm curious to actually do a little bit more research into this, but what I would imagine is it allows them to actually have fewer buyers that are able to really be forward thinking about food trends in a way so that even though they don't have a large selection, they're able to constantly keep people excited and engaged and looking forward to going and seeing what culinary experience they're going to be able to enjoy. I will say I'm a little bit of a Trader Joe's nerd, and I follow a few Instagram.
You are preaching to the literal choir. I mean, at least maybe I'll speak for myself, Brandon. Trader Joe's in California is also really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm a huge fan. I miss it tremendously. And I totally get what you mean. I just went home the past few months and that was where I ran to first. And I was so pumped. And it was so cool to see everything you're talking about, this sort of the curation of products, new stuff that I hadn't seen before. I went and bought some of my old favorites. And it goes back to, I think, some of your key points, which is are you listening? Are you thinking creatively? Are you creating even a bit of a human through thread with your business? Even if it's on Amazon and you think, I'm just selling this product. Why do I have to make it human? Why do I have to establish a human relationship with these customers? It's you've made a very clear point as to why that matters. I think one thing that I really liked that you said earlier that relates to this is the fact that the sale's not done until that person's opened it and kept the product. That's huge. On Amazon, I think and like many businesses, it's about, did I make the sale? And it's well, remember on Amazon, it is so easy to return stuff. So you're really not in the clear till you're in the clear, So it goes back to, did that copy set expectations? Did that copy really sell them in the beginning, or were they just trying you out? And then you're due for a lot of returns. And how do you fix that in the copy and the initial impression of the business? All that matters. It's very circular. But I just think that, as I think a lot of people miss that boat, right?
Totally. And it's one of those things that if you're not making the right kind of sale, not only are you creating the cost and hassle of needing to deal with a bunch of returns, but you're also going to make yourself more vulnerable to negative reviews, to poor customer experiences. And Amazon is also paying attention to those things. And you could run into issues with your listing if you are doing a bad job of that, because they don't want bad customer experiences. And so if they see that a business is misleading people, then they're going to suspend that listing, or that listing won't perform as well with its ranking. The algorithm is not so simplistic to just say, does this keyword exist? Amazon's algorithm is very complex. And so, yes, it's important to have that keyword in there, but it's also important to make sure that you're driving sales on that keyword, that you're providing positive customer experiences. And all of those different details, along with many more, are factoring into how you're going to rank in the future. So it really is a cycle, as you mentioned, Sarah, and some of that starts with the copy, and then it transitions over into the product itself, the packaging that you choose, and even the way that you interact with the customers. So if we take it back to Trader Joe's, because I think sometimes it is helpful to have something more tangible than just thinking about it in theoretical senses. So, you have these products that clearly their customers are people that consider themselves foodies, that like to travel, that have a curiosity about the world, but that also want really high quality goods. And they may even sacrifice a little bit of maybe that regularity of being able to get every single thing they need at the grocery store, or knowing that they might fall in love with something and then it will eventually get replaced by something else that they're going to fall in love with. But that's not the only part of what makes Trader Joe's special. It's not just the products. It's the fact that they work really hard to make a fantastic experience from start to finish. Every single time you have to interact with somebody there, they are genuinely, feels like anyway, happy to be engaging with you. I believe they even teach the people working at the checkout line to gently flirt with their customers.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that. I'm going to keep an eye out.
But if you think it's not, and I think we hear flirt and it maybe sounds like it's, making some sort of advance. Yeah. And it's not that, but it's really about making people feel seen, of engaging in conversation that's a little bit more than just how's your day feeling. And what does that do? You walk out of there smiling. So you're not just smiling because you're happy about the products that you purchased, but because you were left with a really positive experience. You had that moment of feeling seen by someone. And we don't necessarily have a lot of opportunities to have those kinds of interactions, especially in the current world that we live in. And so they're just really thoughtful from top to bottom to make sure that the experience they're providing their customers is cohesive, that aligns with what they're trying to achieve, and that it's on brand and something that their customers will respond positively to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, just that creating an experience. It's more than just what you're selling, but there's so many different layers to actually what you're doing, whether it's your Amazon business or another online business, and really thinking about all those touch points, like you said. I feel like this relates to my next question in a way that we're kind of answering it, but I do think it's worth talking about. I want to address, I don't know if I can call them the haters, but let's say the people on the other side, the PPC enthusiasts who are like, hey man, I don't need, let's say they're listening to this and are like, I am untouched by that because I am so good at PPC and other things like that like I win. I'll always win on Amazon. And so I was wondering, for those who say that's who they are, they love PPC, they think it's the only way to be seen on Amazon, what would you say to them and what are they missing out on?
Why don't you want to win more?
There you go. I like that. More winning.
Keep winning. Yeah.
I think there's sometimes oversimplification that I see it either a listing or either PPC, and they're better together. You need both. PPC drives traffic, but PPC does not convert. Your listing converts. And so, yes, drive that traffic. But if you also take the time to be thoughtful of how you can use your listing as a tool to connect with your customers, then without having to do anything else, you will make more sales. And then what happens from that? By making more sales, you're able to turn inventory more quickly. You're able to, the cost of customer acquisition essentially goes down. All of these positive implications without doing anything else. And it lasts. You don't necessarily need to be rewriting your listing from top to bottom on a daily or weekly basis. Yes, you may want to go back and revisit from time to time, either for seasonality or as the category that you're in sort of evolves and changes over time. Or maybe you just do such a good job that you garner a bunch of copycats. And so you need to step things up just because you became the target of copying and you want to make sure to sort of stay ahead of everybody else. But it has such a significant implication on the performance of your business that it shouldn't be overlooked. And let's not forget that Amazon wants to make as many positive sales as possible. And so if you are demonstrating that lots of people want to buy your product when they search this particular term, then you may also start ranking better organically, which means that you're able to get more free traffic, not just having to pay for it. So it really is not something to kind of roll your eyes at. And like I mentioned, even just a few percentage points difference can have a huge, huge impact on everything else that you're doing with your business.
Excellent. I think it's such a fair point, and asking that question, that perspective, it's not the perspective I have, but I think there are people out there that they get fixated. This is my piece of the puzzle. This is what I'm good at. Like, this is how I'm going to win. And it's like, well, you're not really winning. You're not really seeing the full picture and you're missing out. So I think speaking of missing out, I'm really curious, what kinds of results, ROI have you witnessed for listings that have upgraded their copy well?
The most obvious is an increase in conversion rates. And we've even seen people double or triple their conversion rates. I don't want to get into specific numbers because depending on the category, 50% or more conversion rates may be very achievable and something that you're able to do, whereas other categories that are far more competitive or complex, then your ambitions may be a little bit different. But again, the conversion rate isn't the only way that you're able to see an impact. Also getting fewer returns, more positive reviews, fewer negative returns, better brand awareness so that, over time you're seeing more branded searches. So instead of just searching for portable microphones, they're searching for your brand plus the word microphones. So all of those things are definitely impacts that this one change can make and that we are able to see our clients enjoying on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's amazing that you're able to see those kind of results. And I guess it's something that we've had many sellers and buyers as well on this podcast. And they tell us that they might be really great at one particular skill set. Let's say they're really great at product development, but they fall off on the wayside to customer service or maybe just establishing a long-lasting relationship with their customers. So what would you say is your 3 tips or 3 points of advice for those looking to update their listing copy or maybe even their listing pages that might not have that creative or copywriting skill set, something that you've obviously been developing over the years?
Sure. So one thing that I would recommend doing is be a fly on the wall with your customers. And what that means is, of course, if you have the opportunity to do this in person, that's fantastic, but it's not necessary. So let's say you sell yoga products. Maybe go to the local yoga studios where you are and just engage in conversation and see the kind of language that people use and what they care about and how they carry themselves and all of those details. Just get as curious as possible. But you can also do that same thing online. So go to Facebook groups, go to Reddit threads, to Quora questions. And one of my favorite things to do is to actually look up influencers on YouTube for whatever category that we might be writing for and see how people that have created communities around their opinions talk about these things and these products. What are all of those little details that you may be totally oblivious to that people really care about? And then what kinds of words do they use to talk about those things? What other interests do they have beyond that category? And what that will start to do is it will humanize your customers. So instead of just making them, these percentages that you see on the data that you see when you're looking at things, you're able to really picture the human behind it. And just doing that one small tweak will change your experience when you are writing a product page or an insert or the packaging, because you're able to picture a human, not just stare at a blank screen and then try to figure out what you need to say about things. But we have the abilities to be able to do a lot of these things in person because we have those cues that we get naturally. So we have body language and we're, able to be attuned to some of those different things that we might not have with the internet. And so what that means is you're going to need to be doing more research to have a stronger and more solid idea about who it is that you're selling to so that you can create a more compelling argument. So I would say that's number one. And then on the reverse side, just as important is to really have a clear sense of who you want to be as a business. What are your values? What is your mission? Why are you here doing what it is that you're doing? What kind of world are you hoping to create? And the more clear you can be about that, not just in terms of those big picture ideas, but maybe even taking some time to really build out a brand identity, thinking of your business as a person will give that same conviction that you have with who you're communicating to, how to communicate as a business. And that's not something that only impacts your listing. That's something that you can also give to your designers so that they can create packaging that's more in line with the brand that you're trying to create. And that's something that you can give to your customer service representatives so that they can be sure to be communicating with customers in a way that also aligns with the business that you're trying to create. And so all of those things really work together. And then I would say the third piece to keep in mind is to really think about what are those need to know details at the making a decision to buy space. So I think that people can very easily get sort of overwhelmed with feeling like they need to say everything in one particular space. And so really understanding what each piece of, whether it's a product page, a website, or an Amazon listing, what does each piece's job, what is it there to do? And then how can you do the best with that? So for example, the title on your Amazon listing, that's really more of a tool to drive traffic into your listing. So it's kind of like the sign that you put at the front of your store that says, come on in. And people are going to click on that if they know or think that they know that your product is a good fit for what it is that they're looking for, and maybe is something interesting that the other products don't offer. But if you don't do a good job of communicating that, then fewer people are going to be clicking into your listing. But then once they're there, they're not going to be paying as much attention to the title. And so then it really becomes the job of the bullets and the photos and the A+ content and your reviews and, all those other pieces to be able to start to paint a fuller picture of why your product is a great choice.
Yeah, I really like that. It's taking those foundational pieces, I guess, and putting them all together and looking at the entire sales funnel or the entire sales process that your customer is going through, and then really just trying to captivate them at each step of the way, not pushing them to one step beyond what their current stage is at. And so that's really great insight in bringing that up. And with more and more FBA sellers and e-commerce brands and more competition, I guess you could say, coming into the landscape, what would you say is something that sellers can do to stay ahead of the competition, staying in the Amazon ecosphere, I guess, for this question, but what can they do to prepare or maybe set themselves apart to differentiate themselves, as we've been talking about in this call, from their competition?
So what we're seeing from Amazon, Amazon kind of helps shape where sellers should be focusing their energies. And what we're seeing from Amazon is that they've started to recognize the importance of branding. And so they are giving more and more privileges to the businesses that really figure this out. And I think that they recognize that if they're going to continue to maintain their dominance in the e-commerce space, that it is necessary for the brands that sell on their site to be figuring these pieces out. So really keeping an eye towards what's happening beyond Amazon and making sure that you are staying very relevant to what customers want to see. I would say maybe that's kind of like a giveaway, and like by staying relevant. But like when I see something interesting, like an interesting tag or a really well-written insert or something like that, I'll save it. And so I have a few on my desk right now, but one is from a company called Girlfriend Collective, and they make their athleisure wear with recycled plastic from old water bottles and fishing nets. And they could have just stopped there, right? So they could have just said, we're a sustainable business and we use these materials, the end. But that's kind of like a semi-commitment to this idea of sustainability. And they've really gone above and beyond. So on this tag, they start off by talking about that, but then they talk about how the item you're holding was made in an ethical factory that guarantees fair wages, free catered meals. Then they talk about eco-friendly dyes, their dyeing process, and how that might actually lead to some irregularities. So that's so interesting, right? They've told us all of these awesome things about their business. And then they're saying, because we care so much about these things, the product you're holding might actually not be perfect. And so people may even be willing to forgive imperfections or some things that aren't as great about the product because they share the same values and vision as this business. So it really goes much further than just kind of using some fancy catchwords. And it can have positive impacts, not only in creating stronger loyalty towards the business, but also having customers be a little bit more forgiving if something may actually fall a little bit short in another area.
It's an excellent example. I love that. Like, being able to walk us through and say, here's the touch points where they created the story. They even made it possible for you to forgive any sort of irregularities in the product because you're on board with this. I mean, like you're saying, like, I think that's what it's going to have to take to be able to stay relevant and to stay ahead in the future is to really be thinking far and wide about that experience, that relationship, those values, all the things that I think, and I feel like the whole interview has made a really good case as to why you have those things. But I hope that anyone who was skeptical before this realizes like, okay, I need to be thinking about what I'm doing way more than like just something I'm selling online. And once I do, this is where I open up the channel to just win a bit more. So it's awesome. I really appreciate all your perspective. We tend to wrap these up with like rapid fire questions. So I was going to kick one off. Now, granted, you've kind of answered some of this in a way, but we'll do it rapid fire if it can be deduced. What would you say is the secret sauce to create great content as an e-commerce brand?
Yeah, that's a really tough one to distill to a quick answer. But I would say boldness and courage and bravery to really commit to what makes you special and unique and different. So, we're talking about understanding your customers. We're talking about understanding who you are, but those insights are only helpful if you really lean in all the way and say, yes, this is who we are. And I'm unafraid to maybe even turn some people away that don't share the same vision as I do.
Okay. I love that perspective. So on a different note here, what tools or resources can help e-commerce store owners grow their business?
So many.
I know.
I would say that it depends on who you are as a business. And this doesn't really have anything to relate to what we've been speaking about today. But the more that you can systematize your processes and find tools to help bring order and clarity to the things, the more you'll be able to make sure that you're really committing to all of this other stuff that we're talking about. So it's difficult to really be fully kind of carving out that time to do this deeper thinking and exploration, like I've been encouraging people today, if you're just putting out fires left and right. So for us, one of the best things that we did was integrate a better project management tool about a year ago. And that's just had a positive impact on every single piece of our business. So I would say it's really figuring out where your weaknesses are and then seeing what you need to do in order to be able to resolve that. So maybe for you, you've got your processes in place and you are needing to focus on kind of thinking bigger and thinking beyond just Amazon. And so for you, then maybe even go attend a trade show if you have the ability to travel in your category and see what's going on there. Because I don't think that a lot of e-commerce businesses spend the time doing that kind of work. But these large companies that attend trade shows have staffs of people who it's their jobs to identify where the industry is moving. And so the more that you can be aware of those things, why not take that opportunity? I realize this is supposed to be rapid fire. That was definitely not a rapid fire response.
I should also make it clear, I would say a majority of the time we speak to people and say rapid fire, it is almost never rapid fire. I think part of the reason is they're deep questions. They are hard to deduce, especially when they're fun ones. When you're talking about tools and resources, oh my gosh, I mean, we could do the entire episode on tools and resources and things that help. So, but I do like that. I like what you're saying. It's amazing what exists out there for things like trade shows and what opportunities you can pick up from that. And probably many of us haven't thought about in-person opportunities in a while, but if things continue to open up, then maybe starting to bring that into your awareness and go, okay, is that a next step for me? What could I gain from that? Are other people doing that? And then just seeing where it opens up from there. So excellent point. I really appreciate you saying that.
Well, and even if it's not in person, there are professional trade associations for every niche of product under the sun. And so participate in those, see how people are innovating and what they're doing. I just think that curiosity is a really undervalued skill when it comes to being able to be successful in business. A lot of times people look at those easier to define, I know how to run Excel spreadsheets really well, or what have you. But I think that the more that you can expose yourself to cool things that people are doing, maybe even totally unrelated, read, learn about human psychology, the more that you fertilize your brain with different ideas, the better job you'll be able to think creatively about your own business. And the better job that you'll also be able to do at sort of thinking farther and thinking differently, because you're not just going to be doing what everybody else is doing.
Absolutely. I like what you brought up there is the in-person stuff as we're now starting to get back into the conferences. And, we just wrapped up our first conference of the year at Prosper Show in Las Vegas. And, you're absolutely right. Seeing where your industry is going and talking with the other services or providers that are also offering similar types of products within your category or your industry is really great because it's keeping you relevant again without having to do the research online to stay relevant or to copy, I guess, the people at the top of the pack or whatever you'd like to say there. But yeah, I think it's super relevant and it's great advice as well, too. Not only just in-person stuff, but as well with influencers on YouTube and seeing where your industry is going. And I think that's really awesome insight. And I'm sure our listeners as well, listening to this call, can also see the value in that and maybe, have that new idea or new perspective now that they might not have had before. And now for the final rapid fire question for you, Emma. So this is kind of a fun one. We usually like to wrap these up with. What has been your funniest moment working as a digital entrepreneur?
Being in business with my husband. No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. That's not really, it is funny. That's a fantastic question. And, I saw that when you sent over the questions in preparation for this conversation. And I think that my mind was just like, oh, I'll think of something on the spot. And then lo and behold, I feel like it's like when you ask that question of what books have you read recently? And then at least for me, my mind always goes blank. And I'm like, I don't know. Do I read?
Yep, I totally
read a lot, but so funniest moments. I'm sure there are numerous ones, but nothing is jumping out to me, to be perfectly honest, which is, I'm sorry, guys. I feel like I'm letting you down.
Not at all. It's great. And I guess, I don't know if it's funny. I think it's awesome, actually, that you're working with your husband. But yeah, I guess I'm sure you guys had those conversations where you might not be on the same page, but, you figure it out. And, it's always a fun conversation as well, too, that you can share with your spouse, being in the same industry, same business. And I think that's really awesome, regardless. So that's really cool.
You mentioned funniest, and this isn't really funny necessarily, but I think that being an entrepreneur can put a lot of pressure on your personal relationships. I think that a lot of times when people hear about, oh, you're in business with your husband, that's amazing. It is amazing. And I'm so grateful to be able to share this journey with him. And I think it would be difficult whether I was doing this business alone and then he had no idea of what my life looked like, or we were in this together and having the pressure of running a business and all of the stress that entails. But I love being in business with my husband. We are very complementary in our skill sets. And that also means we have very different ways of looking at the world, which means that we constantly disagree, which is, I think, exactly what you should have in partnership. Because if you have somebody that thinks exactly like you, then you're going to have a very narrow perspective of how to handle problems or how to think about where you should go. And so by being able to bring such different viewpoints and opinions, we're able to really kind of assess things more fully. So I kind of celebrate the disagreements. So we just try to keep the disagreements, respectful. Not to give a lesson on, running a business with partner.
Yeah, but partnership. I mean, we have loads of people come on, and I know like Justin and Joe, I think even did a podcast at one point on how did they run Empire Flippers as partners. It's a similar thing. Being able to have a partner in a business and even a partner in life, not always easy, but I like the way that you said, he's not a stranger to what you're doing in your business and your day. And I actually think that's a really powerful thing to have both you guys on the same page, to understand the challenges together, to face them together. Maybe some other people might be intimidated by that. Obviously, you guys have been able to make that work, and it sounds like become stronger for it and produce stronger results for your clients. So I think that's awesome. I've loved this conversation, Emma. I also keep thinking now of Trader Joe's, and I just want to send you.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
Croatia definitely does not have Trader Joe's, but
or Mexico,
or Mexico. It is like the beauty, living wherever you are. I know you're out in the Midwest in the States, and oh man, please go to Trader Joe's for us today. Just think of us.
If it's any consolation, I live in a college town that is about an hour and a half away from the closest Trader Joe's. So I too pine for frequent trips. I do end up getting there about once a month, but it is definitely something that I may or may not have signed a petition or to solicit them to consider our city for future expansions.
Hey, if you need some more people to sign that petition, you just send that over to me and Brandon. We've got a big email list. No, I'm just kidding. But I would definitely sign that. No, it's cool. I think after this episode, maybe shoot you a couple products your way and say, go buy these things if they exist at your Trader Joe's, because they are awesome. And I want to
awesome. But like, listen to the way that we are pining for a grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
If this doesn't speak to the significance of what you're able to do if you really figure these things out, then I don't know what does. Because at least for me, it's, mid-morning. I'm not hungry. I have a full work day ahead of me. And yet I can't wait until my next Trader Joe's visit. So as sort of, maybe silly as this little chatter might sound, I think it's a pretty profound statement on the impact of really thoughtful branding.
Absolutely.
It's an excellent point. And I love that you've been able to sort of take that full circle. Yeah, I think all of us, entrepreneurs online, Amazon entrepreneurs, think bigger, think like Trader Joe's, aspire for that, the full connection, like Emma's saying. It's been awesome. Thank you again, Emma, for coming on and sharing all your wisdom with us. And it's been a lot of fun in the process. So I'm looking forward to seeing what feedback we get and the sort of things that people are able to now do. And I'd say make over more than just their listings, but really how they approach their businesses. It's a very powerful thing. So thank you.
Of course. I'd also love to, if anybody is not sure whether their listing is up to snuff, we are always happy to take a look at that and give you our feedback about our observations and whether we think there may be some room for improvement, or, maybe we'll take a look and way to go. You knocked it out of the park. You're awesome. And go invest your time and energy in other things.
Absolutely. Well, and I would definitely leave some links to you in the show notes. I want to make sure that people have access to you because I think they're going to be pretty excited about what they're hearing. So yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing how it plays out and seeing what you guys get up to next.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It has been a delight to nerd out about copy, branding, and Trader Joe's with you.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
We love it. Any chance to nerd out, we'll take it. So thank you.
Right there with you.
Hey everyone. Now that we wrapped up the episode and learned about content optimization for e-commerce brands, we wanted to cover common questions about buying and selling online businesses. So today's question: what's the average time from listing a business for sale with Empire Flippers to finishing the sale completely? So on average, across all business models and business sizes, and to put that in perspective, we sell from sub 100K businesses to 8-figure businesses. It takes 43 days to sell once listed on our marketplace. Typically, that's average. For 7-figure Amazon FBA businesses, to put that in perspective, it would say be pretty typical for a business to have their buying offer in around about day 28. Obviously, there's a little bit of due diligence that's going on prior to that, but typically there's an offer in around then, and then it starts moving into the phases of closing and being sold. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, gives you a little bit of perspective, and gets you excited about the prospect of selling your business. All right, everyone, that wraps up this week's episode of the Opportunity Podcast. We hope you've gained some valuable insight on the opportunities that digital acquisitions offer. Click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace to learn more about listings currently live on our platform. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a review and subscribe to this podcast for more great content that'll be released soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Opportunity Podcast. We're looking forward to having you back next week to hear from your fellow entrepreneurs and online experts.